Well, now, Bahrain's longtime Prime Minister has died in the United States. Khalifa bin Salman Al Khalifa was 84 years old. He was head of the government in the Gulf Kingdom since 1970, making him the longest-serving Prime Minister anywhere in the world. He was receiving medical treatment in the US. His body is now being sent back to Bahrain for a funeral. The government has now announced a week of mourning. Well, let's speak to Marc Owen. He's an assistant professor of Middle East Studies at Hamad bin Khalifa University and the author of the book Political Repression in Bahrain. He joins us now on Skype from here in Doha. Marc, one of the longest-serving prime ministers, more than half a century. He was also a controversial figure, though. Talk us through his legacy.
Yes, so as you said, Khalifa bin Salman is the longest-serving prime minister in the world. He rose to prominence in the 60s, but actually became prime minister in the 70s, where he spearheaded really the shift from independence from the UK to kind of full reassertion of Al Khalifa control over internal affairs. As such, he gained a reputation for being particularly brutal in his oppression of political opposition. Throughout the 70s, 80s and 90s, he is basically he was essentially responsible for ordering mass arrests of opposition figures in the early 1980s. For example, he ordered the arrest of 650 Shia protesters, non-protesters, civilians, even though they hadn't engaged, for example, in any wrongdoing. He just did it because he wanted to send a message that the Bahraini government, to use a quote by a British official at the time, were true Arabs. So he's definitely gained a reputation as a hardliner and a person who does not tolerate any form of dissent or challenge to Al Khalifa hegemony in Bahrain.
Well, there were also corruption allegations, right, Marc? The Arab Spring protests, I recall, back in 2011, they tried to remove him but failed. How did he survive in office?
Well, he survived in office because the Bahraini state is, one, it's a very small country with a large security force. It has the backing of the United States and the United Kingdom, so it has powerful allies who generally support the government. And let's look at 2011. He survived, but look at the consequences of his corruption. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people marched in the streets in 2011, united by the fact that they were all sick of corruption in Bahrain, and much of that corruption was embodied by the prime minister. So people did want democracy, and they wanted more democratization, but they also wanted an end to what they saw as the theft of the natural resources of the country that should have been better distributed to the Bahraini population.
Marc, you mentioned powerful allies there. How was he regarded by foreign powers?
He was regarded as incredibly smart, shrewd, intelligent. And this is one of the reasons that explains his long survival. He was a cunning political actor, and he really knew, or he was able to actually implement a lot of the modernization of Bahrain. So many Bahrainis probably actually like him, but certainly the opposition won't shed much of a tear for him, even though he was generally considered quite popular amongst foreign diplomats simply because he was regarded as very competent.
Well, let me ask you then about succession. I mean, there are obviously very close ties in the region between various countries. Bahrain, very much allied with Saudi Arabia. How much influence do you think Riyadh will have on who replaces him?
Riyadh will be, they will have the final say on whoever replaces the prime minister. And even if the prime minister was going to be someone considered more liberal, I mean, the deputy prime minister is the current crown prince who's regarded as a reformer, inevitably the prime minister's role will be limited to kind of overseeing social change and potentially economic change. The notion of political change will certainly have to have the okay from Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia, at the end of the day, determine the extent of the governance structures in Bahrain with regards to politics. So whoever will be limited by that relationship.
Marc Owen there from Hamad bin Khalifa University here in Doha. Great to get your insights on Al Jazeera. Thanks for being with us, Marc.
Thank you.